your mind.
Hello and welcome to Open Your Mind Radio. You have myself, Alan James.
Myself, Stephen George. Good evening.
Good evening. It's Sunday, the 1st of May, 2016. The 1st of May, we're supposed to see the summer.
Yes, happy May Day.
Happy May Day. We're supposed to see the summer.
May Day, we're sinking in all the rain. Hasn't stopped raining here.
The weather that has been going the last few days is just unbelievable. Hailstones and sunshine, then hailstones, then rain and sunshine.
Snow. Don't forget the
And snow. I mean, it's amazing what you can do with geoengineering, isn't it?
It's
fantastic.
Absolutely amazing. It just they couldn't give us some sunshine.
Right. Okay. Now on the show tonight, we have Peter Paget, and he has a book just out there called The Secret Life of a Spook. And Peter has loads of information. He worked for the UK government, and hopefully we're going to be getting loads of top secret information, or what he's happy to reveal to us, and we'll find out the things that are going on, and we're really going to go to all different areas. So look forward to speaking to Peter in a few minutes' time. We also have a pre-record with a chap from called Jasper Hampton from Cork, and Jasper gave us a ring during the week. And he's very busy down in Cork setting up time banking systems online and getting things going. And there's a few set up there. Now, he heard our show via the timebanking.org team in the UK. And he gave us a ring to say that, he's working on this. And he wants to let people know that time banking is set up and it being in the process of being set up. And if you're in a location or in a county in Ireland you want a time bank, you can contact Jasper. We'll give you the details and get one set up and get your friends and family involved and take it from there. So it's a pre-record we're going to play at the end of the show. But before we go on and talk about a few bits and pieces, we'll find out what the communication channels are.
Yeah, communication channels this evening are as follow.
The communication channels are email info@oymireland.com, by phone 046 927 1212, and you can also contact us direct through the OYM chat room.
Thank you, Mary. Yes, the phone number is 046 927 1212. If you want to call in from outside the Republic of Ireland, the phone number is 00353 469 271212. As we say every week, we also have the anti-social media, Facebook. If you want to check us out there, just log on to the website. The website is oymradio.com. You will see the link there for the Facebook. Just click on that and you can see what we're up to. We also have the YouTube channel as well. The link can also be found on the website, as can the chat room as well. So if you want to chat with us this evening or put some questions up for a guest, that is the place to do that. You can just log in there. Again, the link is on the website. Log in with your name, a real name or a made-up name. It doesn't matter. We also have the chat room on People's Internet Radio. We're going to monitor both of the chat rooms for questions this evening. And we also have, for your listening pleasure, the TuneIn Radio Link application. As we mentioned, if you have an Android device or an iPhone or an iPad or any of those devices, you can check that out as well. The link can also be found on the website. It's a free download and you can listen to us 24/7, 365. Alan.
Excellent, Steve. Right, okay, just a few things before we get Peter on. The first thing is on the examiner.com website, it says that the building rules to make open fires obsolete. Traditional open fires will become a thing of the past, or else a luxury item under little-known building regulations. Now, I guess I'm taking a shot at this, and I guess it's got to do with Agenda 21, for want of a better reason, because obviously if you're relying on energy and they cut your energy off, then you can't. Normally, if you have an open fire, you can actually throw things in and heat your house and boil a kettle or cook a bit of food if need be. But they're obviously trying to do away with this under maybe the carbon tax or some excuse like that. I reckon it's down to Agenda 21. So just something to bear in mind. I came across it during the week and I thought, okay, so now they're going to try and take our open fires away. We can't have that cosy open fire watching TV anymore.
Yeah. Well, I mean, let's be honest about it. When you do have an open fire, and I have an open fire, and you have an open fire, But a lot of the heat goes up the chimney.
I know.
It's wasted anyway.
Yeah.
So I mean, you're actually heating the atmosphere. So would I miss the open fire? Well, actually I would in a way, because it's inbred into us here in Ireland, on a cold winter's eve, everyone kind of huddles up around the fire and you throw the briquettes or some coal. But, if they do take it away from us, all is not lost, because there are little inventions out there that people have come up with over the years. One is the rocket stove. And if you check out the rocket stove, there's hundreds of different variations on this, again, rocket stove. And it's kind of like a fire that you would have in your home. You can feed it with anything you like. They're very economical to run and use. And they will heat they'll heat the room anyway, whatever room you happen to be in, and provide hot water as well. So rocket stove, check it out, definitely.
Now, it's
worth having in your arsenal.
It's not the same as an open fire, because you can't beat an open fire, but Steve is right, most of the heat goes up the chimney anyway. But again, as Hammy said on the chat room, it's they want us to rely on the state again. They don't like people being self-sufficient. And we know that. And in the States, as you know, they're stopping people growing their own food in their own garden, and they're stopping people collecting rainwater. They want us, completely controlled by the state. So just something to keep in mind if you see it. Just keep an eye out, if you see it advertised or being mentioned. Steve?
Yes. We have some information in relation to Tom Darcy via Bob Kelleher. Last night, a homeless mother called him and asked if he knew of any safe area around East Wall. I used to live there. I just thought I'd mention that. East Wall, where she could park her car for the night. No hotel room or emergency accommodation, no petrol to waste, just a Ford Focus for her family. She went on to reveal to him what her life was like being homeless. By 3 a.m. the car is cold, windows full of condensation, she says. My 6-year-old daughter needs a toilet. For us, it's a doubled up plastic bag. I hold it under her buttocks as she balances between the car and the path. Rain falling on her heads as she relieves herself. The stench of urine filling our car. I knot the bag and place it under the car, joining the others. Closing the door, we huddle together to keep warm. Teenagers bang on the roof. Faces appear at the windows. Torches of An Garda Síochána shine into our faces. By 5 a.m. the noise is too much as articulated trucks pass, rocking us awake. Our sink is a 5-litre bottle of water from Tesco's, held over a basin so I can wash my kids. Cold milk and snacks for breakfast. I drop my eldest off to school. I'm happy she's warm and safe as I park around the corner, looking at the faces of my babies, ashamed, humiliated, waiting for the day to repeat itself all over again. If you treated an animal like this, you'll be prosecuted. Our media would fill our papers exposing those responsible. Our government would jump up on their soapboxes, and our church would ask, where is Christianity? They all remain muted. We, this community of Ireland, are showing the world how far we have come between 1916 and 2016. As we allow mothers and children to be subjected to this inhuman suffering. That's horrible.
Now
that's a horrible story.
I know, that's one story out of many out there that Tom has put up on his Facebook page, and that's a true life story of that's one story of many, and this is like Ireland 2016. It's disgraceful. I was down in the Collection Hotel yesterday. The Ken Smolin from the IDP had an event on, and all the parties were down there. The Anti-Eviction Task Force, National Land League, the Hub, Lay Litigant Ireland. So sad. There's so many groups down there, and I went down and to find out, what was being said, and was there any ideas. So I'll be talking about that in Alan and Steve's week, and just kind of give you an update. But how's your week, Steve?
An interesting week. I just have one or two things written down on a piece of paper here.
Again?
I'm just doing that for effect,
I thought we had the sound effect with that.
Yeah. Well, not for the €50. No, we don't. I wish. Yeah, my wife was. Do you remember we were talking during the week? And you were saying
which we do quite a lot.
We do quite a lot. Yeah. We catch up and we shoot the breeze. And there's a lot, I don't listen to mainstream, so whenever I'm in work, I'm not listening to the radio. So, Alan normally fills me in on what's going on in the real world, and he was telling me that there's ongoing kind of negotiations within our so-called government. I'm going to say puppet government, and the water tax that we have abhorred for a long time now. Seemingly it's getting shelved for a while now.
Well,
yeah. It's not getting knocked on the head, but it's getting. They're talking about shelving it for some months anyway.
Well, they're talking now about an attachment order if you don't pay, but your bill has to get up to over €500 before they can get an attachment order.
Yeah, and I don't think they can get an attachment order unless, of course, they can bring you to court, and they can't really bring you to court unless, of course, you have a contract with them and you're in breach of that contract.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. This employed contract, a unilateral contract that they talk about, the fact that you're still using their service, you're still using water. This is the tricky ground, you see.
Yeah.
And if you think about it, if one person goes in and argues the point, I mean, what's the chances of the judicial system letting people off?
Probably slim to none.
Well, yeah, slim to none, yeah.
Anyway, that's neither here nor there. But my wife wrote this out for me during the week. After we had discussed this, I was shooting the breeze of her. And I'm going to read it as she wrote it. And she said, the people who paid the water charges are complaining. They deserve a refund because seemingly those who already paid, if this gets shelved for so many months or whatever, those who've already paid are saying, we want to be refunded. And the government are saying no. So she says, they deserve a refund. I think they should take to the streets, like the No campaigners did. And if 61% of those who allegedly already paid turn onto the streets will be absolutely jam-packed. They'll be full of people. Okay. So when obviously when the protest was on and we were saying, we will not pay a third time or a second time, we all took to the streets. Those who were comfortable in their homes and said, oh, we'll pay because, we don't mind paying and we can afford to pay. Well, now those people are saying, hang on a second, if this gets shelved, we want a refund. Well, if you want it that bad, take to the streets and protest for it, like everyone else.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
And the only other thing I want to mention too, and I actually put a link, I was checking this out as well, and the only reason this caught my eye, this story, is because it's about a 3-year-old girl in Houston, Texas. And it was a heart-wrenching story for me because my daughter is also 3. My daughter is a happy, healthy 3-year-old, unvaccinated. But this little girl in Houston, Texas, Serenity is her name, and back in 2012, she was vaccinated with a 6-in-1 and then I think two other vaccinations. So she had 8 injections by the time she was 6 months. At 6 months of age. Now, seemingly her parents didn't want her vaccinated, but the doctors kind of threatened, for want of a better word, the parents and cajoled them into getting her vaccinated. So within a month of the vaccination, she had went from a regular, normal 6-month-old baby to, how would you say, well, they say here, she collapsed into a state of brain damage. That's what they said in the article. And it actually went on to say that the doctors tried to say that the parents had shaken the baby. And that was exactly what happened. But then, I think more research was done. They retracted that statement and they apologised. But the story, it goes on to say exactly, how the parents felt. In the mother's own words, the mother, after this happened, she was so horrified that the doctors and the hospitals would not take responsibility. No responsibility at all. And she actually wrote and has published her own story on the internet for other people to see. And 3 years down the line, obviously it's still getting around because I only heard about it this week. So, and say her daughter is 3, but she says even now at the age of 3, her daughter she still has these seizures where, as in the mother's words, her body will lock up for 30 to 45 minutes where she's just kind of in a state of rigidity. She said in some aspects it's like a stroke, and she's probably going to be like in this state for the rest of her natural born life. The mother also goes on to say that they're not really getting much help, but the help that they are getting is kind of, well, the whole medical system saying that, well, it wasn't caused by the injections, and that if the parents want to still continue to get the little bit of help that they are getting, that they have to keep her in the system, which means she's going to be subject to yet more vaccinations over, well, until whatever age they stop getting them at, I don't know.
That's bad.
Yeah, and again, the child, she can barely walk, is what the mother says. She walks on her tiptoes, but she falls a lot. And I just thought, you know, when I look at my daughter, who's the same age, and I see how happy and healthy she is, and Alan knows her quite well, and she's never sick. She's never sick, really.
Very happy.
Yeah, she might get a cough or a cold, but it's gone. Nothing takes its toll on her, and I hope it stays that way. And it just goes to show, some people say, you know, that I'm a bad parent, or we're bad parents because we didn't go down the vaccination road. But yet, when you see a child that has gone, and you see the way they can end up, not all do, but some do. Anyway, that's just a little story that I just wanted to mention, and you know, just keep it on the back burner as well. If you do know someone who is going to bring a child for vaccinations, or if you yourself are bringing a child for vaccinations, do your homework first. You know, make an educated decision, and don't just believe everything that the doctor tells you, because at the end of the day, the doctor is indoctrinated.
Now, just to add to what Steve said, pharmaceutical companies are immune from prosecution. Okay, so if anything happens, you won't be able to sue them. And if the doctor's convinced that the vaccine is the right thing to do, get him to sign a form that's saying he'll take personal liability for it, and see how quick he turns around and says, no, I'm not going to do that. Now, if he's convinced that the vaccine is the right thing to do, I'm sure he'd put his money where his mouth is. So, something to consider if you're going to get your kids vaccinated, or you're thinking about it. Right, my week, basically...
how's your week? Sorry.
No problem. I paid another visit down to the hub during the week, and the hub are in need. They have a PC down there that's really, really slow. Very, very slow. I mean, literally, you can't use it. So they just... I said I'd give them a shout out that if anybody has a laptop that we could use, probably better than Windows 7. Sorry, Windows 7 or above. Windows XP would be just too slow. If you can let us know, and we'll make the arrangements for either the hub in Mullingar to pick it up, or one of us will pick it up off you. That would be fantastic, because they're doing sterling work over there, but they only have one laptop, and the other laptop that they had was Sharon's, but I think that's quite old as well. So if you do have a half decent one, let us know, and we'll pass it on to the hub down in Mullingar. Right. The other thing is, as I said, I went down to the event in the old Sheeling Hotel in Portlaoise yesterday, and all the groups are there, which is great to see. As I say, the Anti-Eviction Task Force, the hub, National Land League, So Sad, lay litigants, and a number of others, and there was a few SFTDs there, Sinn Féin TDs, and one or two independents. And there was a lot of information thrown around. Everybody knew what the problem was, but there seemed to be a lack of solutions. There was one or two ideas put out, but there was more people kind of saying what the problem is than actually the solutions being put out. And the one thing that, now I'm not having to go at anybody in particular about this, because there's so many groups out there, but I've been to a few of these events over the last few years, and the one thing I've noticed is that the alternative media never seems to get a mention. They complain about the mainstream media, to complain about the propaganda and everything else, but they never seem to mention the alternative media. And I'm not just talking about OYM, I'm talking about all the mainstream, the alternative media, and they never seem to get a mention. So that's the only thing I was disappointed in, because I'd like to think that the alternative media add something as well, along with all the other groups out there, that we have done our bit, and we've kind of helped out in a little way with people, and it just seems to be forgotten or not mentioned, which is a bit disappointing. But we are going to try and get Ken Smolin on, who represents the IDP party, on the 5th of June. There's going to be another meeting on the 11th of June in the Is it not the Old Sheelan? Collection Hotel, isn't it? Collection, sorry.
Yeah.
I said the Old Sheelan, didn't I?
Yeah, you brought me right back to the Old Sheelan.
Yeah, okay, sorry. That's good. That's a different pub completely.
A different story.
The Collection Hotel down in Portlaoise. I stand corrected. The Collection Hotel. And on the 11th of June, they're going to have another meeting. So we're going to get Ken on the week before that, and we're going to get him talking about what's going on. And we'll have a talk to him and ask him to kind of give a mention to the alternative media, because, you know, people have access to the internet, and the whole idea of getting these groups on is to talk about what's on, to give them the platform to have a talk and have their say and not be interrupted or put down by these, you know, paid shills in the mainstream media. That's the whole idea. That's why the platform is here. So that's the plan of attack. That's what we'd like to do, and that's what we're going to mention to Ken, and if we can put it out there, we'll go down on the 11th of June anyway, to the meeting anyway, and see what's being said. But there's a lot of people obviously very angry about what's going on in Ireland with the evictions. I mean, you just heard Steve reading out one of many cases out there of what's going on. It's unbelievable, so something has to be done about it. But anyway, let's bring our guest on, because he's been waiting in the wings now in the green room for a good few minutes, and I think it's time we bring Peter on and we find out what's been happening in the world of spooks. Good evening, Peter. How are you?
Good evening, and thank you for inviting me on the show.
No problem at all. Thanks a lot for coming on. Steve's going to read out your bio, and just to give people a bit of a background about who you are, Peter. Over to you, Steve.
Yeah, just a quick introduction. Peter was born in London just after the end of the Second World War, a baby boomer. He grew up in London and the West Country, where his intelligence was noted at an early age when he advised the Cabinet Office Chief Scientific Advisor at the age of just 17 years old. By donating free of patent or royalty a technological technique to HMG, this was later bought and taken up by BP Oil and distributed worldwide. Peter was co-opted into the British intelligence community shortly after this, and has worked undercover on various tasks and assignments over the past 50 years, while also leading a double life as author, lecturer, therapist and adventurer internationally. He has been both a researcher and programme contributor to the BBC, ghostwritten books for Grenada, made educational programmes for students, and the British Army schools have written under a pen name, where his 2 paperbacks have sold in both the English language, French and Spanish translation, over 500,000 copies. Peter was trained as a professional sub-editor and script editor, and some of his family members are currently engaged full-time in the media. Peter was a full member of the Royal Television Society in 1995 as a researcher.
There you go. And I bet you could actually probably fill another page and a half with your background, Peter, and what you were involved in.
That's the short version you've got there.
That is, that's what I'm saying. I'm sure that is. Now, you have you have a book coming out. I don't know, is it released yet, your book?
No, we're still researching a publisher for this book, and at the end of the show, you're going to give out my email, which you have there, which is okay with me. And I'm not into this for money. I'm retired now, so if anybody goes to that email and actually requests the book, I will send it to them free electronically. It's 83,000 words, and it's a sort of sanitized autobiography of my life.
Okay, now tell us, I mean, you were very young when you got brought in to the UK government and started working for them. Tell us why that was, how they noticed you and thought, this guy's going to be good. What kind of triggered them, or what flagged them to you?
Well, some of you guys might remember a long, long time ago there was a tanker called Torrey Canyon, and Torrey Canyon went on the rocks down off Cornwall and broke her back and was leaking oil. And prior to that, which was in the 60s, I'd done quite a bit of personal research on oil pollution control, and I had some pretty shrewd ideas of what might help, and so I hung all this together, and I had a very good aged friend, believe it or not, a Commander Bond. His name was not James, but he was very well connected. He was 89 years old, and he knew Sir Solly Zuckerman, who was the Chief Scientific Advisor at the Cabinet Office at that time, and he said that, Sir Solly's got to see this stuff. So it went off to courier. It went off with a courier to the Admiralty. And when the Cabinet held an emergency meeting, they took my ideas forward. And they really didn't know how old I was at that time. So I was probably the youngest temporary scientific advisor the Cabinet's ever had.
Fantastic. That's a massive step from being so young, getting involved. Now tell us something about the projects that you've been involved in, because I know we have a limited time with the interview tonight, and obviously people are interested in finding out about things that they would like to know about and you've come across and that you can tell us about. So, you know, the book is entitled The Secret Life of a Spook. So what have you come across in your career that you feel people would need to know about or should know about, or have been fooled into thinking that something's real when it's not?
The problem that we've progressively moved into in the so-called modern world, particularly over the last 30 years, is that information and history is manufactured. Basically, governments all over the world, they're all, they're all in it together, really. There's no angels and devils here. They all follow the same procedure. They like to keep the news entrained so that you guys out there are in the dark. You're being titillated and distracted and kept online while they give you things that basically keep things all tickety-boo. So very, very rarely do you get much real news, and if you do get it, then it's usually very, very carefully information managed so that it follows some online government message. And I've always been an independent in a sense that I've always tried to work on the inside. I mean, if you recall when we were going into Iraq originally, there were hundreds of thousands of people on the street. Tony Blair ignored everybody. And I've always tried to work on the inside by whispering in ears, because I think that does more good than protesting on the street.
Okay, well, that makes sense. And obviously the propaganda never stopped after World War II. It carried on and got more advanced, because that's obviously what we're being fed now with the mainstream media, I assume.
The problem is, as I say, the last 30 years, the mainstream media has been focused into extraordinarily few hands. So they're all on the same hymn sheet. And even if you click between news channels on an evening, you'll probably find the same priority and the same timing of outlet of a particular item is true to all channels miraculously. And so, there's some kind of, backdoor liaison must go on. And equally, unfortunately, as I say, I did work for the BBC for a while, doing research and associate director, and in news and features. And I've seen stories being managed and manufactured, in fact, basically to suit government message. And I'm not exclusive. I'm not anti-government. I try to moderate administrations so that hopefully they head in the right direction. I don't think protesting does a great deal of good.
Okay, we're aware that in the military and certain sections of the government, everybody's given a rank or a level of top secret that you deal with, and it's all compartmentized where you only know a certain amount. What level were you given when you were working for the government? At what level?
Well, everything is in most places, what's called compartmentalized. So very, very few people actually have an overall picture. When there's a problem to be looked at, say a big problem, now let's take Iraq or Syria, then all of that will be broken down into individual compartments, and individual people or groups or teams will be given particular sections to look at. They won't know what the office next door is looking at, and that's not the intention. So they gather information on that, and then they throw it up the line. And one of my old chums, he had this strange phrase. He said, intelligence is like a constipated elephant. It keeps eating, but it very rarely shits. And you can make of that what you will. But what it means is that very rarely does anything come back down. You just keep on putting information in. You don't really know where it goes. You don't even know who or why you've been tasked to do something. And so, I'm retired now. I'm incredibly aged, although I may not sound that. So over time you get to know a lot because you've been in these different compartments. You've known certain things. You can put the dots together with fair, reasonable certainty. And that scares the younger people who are in their 30s and 40s who are flying the desk these days because they know that you're one of the old foxes, one of the wise old guys. And one tries to advise them if you can. I can't actually answer your question directly because that is in itself classified. However, some people have described me as an insider. I don't think that's too far from the truth. But at the same time, nobody is really a complete insider because of this crazy system of keeping everything compartmentalized.
Yeah, I was going to say, when you were working, as say you're retired now, but when you were working, was it a case that somebody would say to you, well, Peter, you're not really supposed to know this, but, and kind of give you a hint of what they're working on?
Well, what you get, frankly, I'll give you one which I can talk about.
Okay.
In the year 2000, coming up to the year 2000, there was a lot of speculation about two things. The Millennium Bug, which allegedly computers would crash because certain bits of code were not going to translate into the next century. And also various sects and religious factions were doomsaying as usual. And people were worried about people creating situations where there would be mass suicides. Some sects, as you know, SECTS, had committed some really quite dreadful things where they'd taken their followers down to, I think, parts of South America, and they'd all either under duress or voluntarily taken pills and killed themselves off. So this was causing a lot. I was actually tasked on countering that, and I was given a task, as they say, to find out who in the world was likely in these various groups to commit mass suicide and how could this possibly be countered. So it was a totally humane mission, which I enjoyed. And I completed that in 7 weeks and made quite a good job of it. And indeed, nothing drastic happened. There were, unfortunately, a few families who, the man of the house, took it upon himself individually to kill the children, then kill the wife and kill himself. And that was very unfortunate. But that was something you couldn't track because it was under radar. But what I'm trying to get across to you is I've always tried to do things which actually were very helpful and constructive and positive and welcomed that task. Now, you're given that task. How you fulfill that task depends on, your level of knowledge or your level of experience and, to a degree, the amount of cooperation. But a lot of people like me work totally alone. That's one of the beauties of it. This is, the people, you got on these fictional things, you've got these teams, like a team of 8 or what have you. But a team of 8 going off on a mission is much less efficient than a team of 1. If you're one person, then you can do a lot more than a team of 8 because you're under radar. And you're not, unlike James Bond, you're not going to be, breezing into town and driving your Aston Martin. You're going to come in and looking like any other tourist or anybody who's under radar. And you're basically just collecting information. After a time, you get to a point where you're analyzing information, which is a different process, and you're trying to make sense because when you're collecting information, you can't decide this is to be sent up, this is not to be sent up. You can give an opinion on whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. But I always try to send up, a very positive view, and I've always been on the side of what I consider the people who had power at the time. Maybe one was seeking to have an effect on their wisdom, if that was possible. But basically, I think you have more. I've always had more effect on the inside than on the outside.
Excellent. Now, obviously, there's an awful lot going on at the moment. So I'd like to try and focus on a couple of things. Well, a few things that are happening as of now, today, and maybe things coming down the line. And I'm just going to throw a few subjects at you, and then you can kind of give us your take on how you feel about them. The likes of, number one, geoengineering. We know that's going on. We can see it. We can see it happening. Why they're doing it. Number two, disclosure. Now, again, there's a lot of information being coming out of the last couple of years and hints of this and hints of that. and that's kind of been escalating over the last couple of years, and more information's coming out. And also the fact about, because I know you're familiar with energy and the energy of the body and how to manipulate the energy of the body and the whole spiritual psychic side as well. So if you want to start off with the geoengineering and give us your take on that.
Yeah, it's a very complex subject, but basically it's always been a dream, I think, of scientists and administrations that can they control the weather, can they affect things positively, and, I've always thought that was, quite a good idea if that could be done. Regretfully, weather control has also been on the agenda of those who saw it as being weaponized. In other words, if you could drop a hurricane on your enemy and it looks like a natural event, then that's a very good way of impacting some kind of economic distress on them. And no one's to blame because, there's no army involved, there's no ordnance, it's very invisible. So geoengineering is a double-edged sword that it can be both positive and it can be negative. It's principally exercised, in my opinion, and in my knowledge to some extent, over the United States of America, the North American continent. It also has some demonstrable situations have occurred in other parts of the world, but America has certainly worked on it very, very seriously for certainly the last 20, 30 years. And people talk about chemtrails, they talk about HAARP, they talk about CERN, they talk about all kinds of things. In the old days, even the Russians were working on a system which was basically came out of Nikola Tesla's research, by which that if you vibrate at very low frequency, you can, in fact, potentially affect earthquake propagation, earthquake possibilities, particularly at the fractal points where plates are already stressed. And there was a system, and there is a system by which both the United States and certainly Russia does have that capability to encourage earthquakes. But it's a bit tidal. You see, I have quite a lot of marine knowledge. Is that if you're going to travel up the coast, you try to travel with the tide, you don't travel against the tide. So these things tend only to be kicked in when other factors, solar wind and other factors, kick in. And you can go on sites, which I have no problem giving out, which are public sites. You can go on Suspicious Observers, you can go on BP Earthwatch, and you can get various people's take on what the sun is doing, because the sun has a huge effect on both weather and earthquakes and volcanoes and all this kind of thing. That's an outline of geoengineering. In other words, yes, geoengineering does take place. It could be used positively. Hopefully it can be. Regretfully, a lot of the time it's used negatively to create economic impact on an area or a region or even a nation. Moving directly on to I wrote them down, your list. Disclosure, I presume you're referring to UFO disclosure.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a kind of, again, a double-edged sword there that, again, the last 15 years there's been a kind of drip feed of the facts and credibility leaning more and more towards that, yes, these things exist, what the hell are they? And even when I go on my Yahoo cover page, when I open up Yahoo, often or not there's a UFO story there, which is sometimes relatively honest, sometimes it's a little bit twisted, but, certainly the subject has become much more credible public domain. Are you going to get the president going on television next week saying, hey, the little green men are here? No way. Because it started really, if I might give you a quick background on this, and it is in my book, is that back just after the Second World War, there are a number of incidents, many people know them by the classic names of Roswell or what have you, which put everybody, particularly stateside, in a very difficult situation. They just won the Second World War against Germany and Japan, and they were hailing themselves as victors, and then suddenly they were made aware that this civilization, or a number of civilizations existed which had technology which made our technology look like something just out of the Stone Age, And they could not possibly go to the general public and tell them that. There was a guy called Forrestal, who I've got a lot of knowledge of, who wanted to do that. He was murdered because he was sort of pushing in that direction.
Yeah.
And other people have been taken out over the years. I won't list names, but I'm sure you're familiar with who they could have been. A lot of people have been taken out because, they were wishing to put a lot out into the public. You see, the thing is, regretfully, everything from various religious bodies to scientific institutions feel very threatened in the past by the fact that, having other very, very intelligent, very, very scientifically advanced bodies out there, the ego takes a big bashing if someone, say, learned a subject for 30 years and suddenly they find that, most of what they've learned is in the trash can. They've got the wrong idea. So, disclosure is drip-fed. In my book, there's disclosure. In my lectures, there's disclosure, but it will be to a very selective audience. Most of the people don't want to know. They're in their comfort zone. They don't really want to be disturbed out of that. And governments certainly don't want to do that. And you're not going to get a governmental disclosure in terms of real terms anytime soon. Coming to the last one, energy. Right, okay, so you guys are into energy. Again, I cover, particularly in my lectures, which you referred to, which if people want to make a note, on YouTube, there's from Miles Johnson, Basis 48, Peter Paget, The Disclosure, and it's parts 1 to 4. I cover in there the fact that behind all matter there is aether or ether, and this was well accepted 150 years ago. It's not just electromagnetic or magnetic, it's something which is beyond that. I had a conversation with Edgar Mitchell, who I was working with for a year, and he totally accepted things like telepathy and energy and things like that. And he said the problem is we don't know the medium that conveys it. And it's a bit like it's an invisible glue which is difficult to put your finger on, but the fact is it's there. And it's like gravity. Gravity works. Here we are all stuck to the planet. No one really knows what gravity is. Actually, they don't. They can speculate. They can create an imaginary gravimetric particle, which is like just putting an X on it, but no one really knows what gravity is. But the fact is, it's obviously there. And lots of these other things happen. And you can read the books of Charles Fort, which is a wonderful compendium of damned facts, the Book of the Damned, not damned people, damned information. And that was collected between about the late 19th century to 1938, of things that science and the media and governments just could not accept. They couldn't work it into their intellectual framework, so they just condemned it, just buried it, and that's what usually happens.
Okay. If memory serves me well, when I was watching one of your presentations that Miles did with you, you did talk about Planet X or Nibiru, and before we went live, we had a quick chat about it, about Dr. Harrington, and the fact that he was talking about it or going to release information on it, and he suddenly was taken out of the picture. Do you have any information whether that's real, fake, disinfo?
What you've got, you see, when you go to school, you get told about the principal planets, and you get these wonderful little Mickey Mouse charts which show, Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, etc., etc. And people get the impression that's it. No, that's not it. There's a lot more. The complexity of the solar system, the complexity of the cosmos is vastly greater than that. The first thing you have to realize is that space is not empty. Space is full of energy. It might not have very many molecules flying around, but those molecules are actually very high energy and very high voltages, very high temperatures, believe it or not. It's only because there's not many of them that it appears to be cold and empty. And you get these huge flows of particles coming out from the sun constantly, and they vary all the time. You've got a lot of objects in the solar system that we're in here. I mean, you've got thousands and thousands and thousands of objects. You've got near-Earth objects, which do fly around and cross our path on a regular basis. Hopefully don't hit us that often, although one of them, did take out the dinosaurs 65 million years ago. Otherwise you wouldn't be here, because mammals were just at all sort of rat-like things in those days, and they've grown on from there. So you get a lot of complexity. And once you start to get into embracing that, then you can understand, well, hang on, the next thing you come up with is the fact that everyone tells you you're part of the Milky Way. No, you're not. You're part of the Milky Way in one respect of an arm, but there's another galaxy which encapsulates the Milky Way, which has been in collision with it for a very, very long time. And in that collision and in that merging, the one absorbs the other. The Milky Way is absorbing the older galaxy. And you get objects which are in different polarity and in different orbits, and that's where you get your Planet X thing coming. If you read Stitching, which is Worlds in Collision, you realize that in the solar system we are now, there have been a lot of changes, and there have been a lot of quite cataclysmic situations in the past few thousand years. Venus is a newcomer. Venus was not there after a few thousand years ago. It arrived, and it rolls around on its side. It doesn't spin upright. It rolls around on its side. Most curious. You've got all of these asteroid zones between Mars and Jupiter where something cataclysmic has happened. You've even got around Saturn these bits which form the rings, which are millions and millions of particles, where obviously things are broken up. You've got Jupiter breaking things up all the time because it's so gravimetrically heavy. And where I'm getting to is that, yes, we seem to have potentially, and even NASA has kind of come out and admitted this now, that we are a binary system, that most of the solar systems in the known cosmos are predominantly binary, even trinary suns. And we possibly do have a brown dwarf, and the brown dwarf wanders around in an orbit rather a long way from the sun and drifts in every few thousand years with its accompanying planets, because there's a lot of confusion about this. There's a brown dwarf, and there's its planets, and then there's the moons to those planets. And there's a lot of dust and debris. Now, you may have noticed that in the past, if you look at the figures, in the past 10 years, the incidence of fireballs and meteors has gone up dramatically, and it continues to rise exponentially. So we are definitely moving into more encounters with debris and dust fields out there, which mostly are burnt up in the atmosphere. Don't get too worried about that. And in fact, just this past 10 days, you had a big fireball over California. You had something popped into the Atlantic 600 miles off of New York and created an 80-foot high wave, although by the time that got to shore it had calmed down to just a very, very low wave because it would have been absorbed by the ocean. You had a big, large rock pop into the eastern side of the United States, created a crater and started a forest fire. And you, of course, had the famous Russian one, which was not that long ago, which injured about 1,000 people and broke, a lot of windows over there in Russia. So, you get this is normal procedure. This goes on all the time, but it is getting greater. I'm not a doomsayer. I think, yes, there is an alternative system which is now in proximity to our sun, proximity to the inner planets. And this is producing certain kinds of very interesting effects, some of which could be detrimental to the civilization, but we might get away with it. It's not an exact science. It's like trying to predict earthquakes. It's not an exact science. I mean, right now, as we sit here now, we can say that within the next 7 days, there's very likely to be another major earthquake somewhere. But to say where that would be almost impossible to predict. So it's not really much point in commenting it to people, except to, in general, to say, we'll know what to have to do if an earthquake does seem to be heading your way. You get a swarm of minor earthquakes. You get a few little shakes. If the snakes come out the ground and run away, if the birds fly away, then you know there's something happening. The Japanese actually keep goldfish. And if the goldfish start jumping out of their bowls, you know that there's about to be an earthquake. So you get out of that building fast, because earthquakes don't kill people, buildings do.
Yeah, that's true. There is an awful lot of earth changes taking place, more so over the last 10 years. We've noticed that as well. And again, there's talk about this pole shift. that's taken place. Some people are saying that it's kind of a soft change. Other people are saying it's going to be more dramatic. What's your take on that?
Well, the poles are moving. They've moved all the time, very, very slowly. They're accelerating, albeit it might only be slow, but like watching grass grow. But they're definitely moving in an increased rate. I think they've moved in the last 5 years more than they've moved in the previous 100 years. You get at something called Chandler's wobble, which is the actual physical rotation of the Earth does alter a bit, like a spinning top, and that's been changing a bit. There does seem to have been some perturbance of our orbit by another body that's out there somewhere. The moon has changed orbit slightly on occasion, so you've got the Inuit Indians up in the Arctic saying, hey, the sun is rising and setting over a different mountain to what it's done before.
That's the Inuits. Yeah, they're having problems.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you can't deny that there are changes, many of which are not predictable or not known. You get people saying, oh, it's due to the ice caps building up or melting, or there's a difference in mass in the North and South Pole. But these are really excuses, because I don't think that's very likely to cause that kind of situation. There has definitely been a bit of gravimetric wobble, particularly in the past 3 or 4 years. And it does seem to be sometimes short-lived, and then things correct. It's like a gyroscope. You move it a little bit, but then it will tend to correct back to where it was. So I say to people, don't get too alarmed about that, but be aware. You should have a degree of backup. I keep a couple of batteries and a method of creating mains electricity from static batteries if I need to as a backup. I've always had that. I've had generators before as backup, and I've had them in Faraday cages. Any tin shed or tin building that's sealed and earthed is a Faraday cage. It keeps out detrimental EMP, which could damage the windings. And bit of dry food, a few water, and basically you've got to be careful of the people around you, because if the people around you know that you've got good stuff and they're starving, you're going to very quickly knock on your door. So you got to choose your neighbours very carefully.
Yeah, John Irwin, who's we call him a super soldier. He doesn't like that name, but he is definitely more advanced than the normal soldier in his career. And he said the same thing. He said, your enemy is not the government, your enemy is your neighbours, because they're the people who will kick down your door if they know you have food, and make sure you have protection, and you have to be mindful of that.
Yeah, I think you should build communities in terms of, really bond with people and talk about this stuff. I think denial is a negative thing. If people go around in denial all the time, it doesn't help. Some communities bond naturally, others you need to work at it a bit. But in the United Kingdom and in Ireland, I think we're pretty civilized people, touch wood, and let's hope we keep it that way. In other parts of the world which have also worked in, it's not that way at all. And even under normal circumstances, sheer poverty will cause a high degree of criminality and violence, and often extremely negative situations. So they don't help themselves at all. Very difficult to help them with it, because they've been survivalists for a very long time. And that's all very well on an individual basis, but it doesn't bode well for communities or indeed countries to hold together.
Well, we have a 20-minute interview after your interview, Peter, talking about time banking, which is a form of bartering. So should anything happen, that's really what we need to kick in, is a time banking, a community-based bartering system. Very big in the UK and the States, not too big over here in Ireland, but we will be talking about that later. Now, in your experience, in your career, would you say that the global system, financial, educational, pharmaceutical, religious, is controlled by a cabal?
Well, it's controlled by various dynasties. There's no one top-down single system. That is an illusion. People talk about the Illuminati or the Bilderbergers or this, that, or the other, thinking there's some kind of wonderful controlled system. there are individual, very powerful families and very powerful interest groups who are looking after their own agendas and usually competing with each other. The irony of it is, by them competing with each other, some kind of balance is maintained. However, over the last 30 years, they have reduced in number, and, maybe they get together and sort of, try to scratch each other's back, which is not a very good thing, because it's the little guy, and the little guy is the 99%, which is out there, is the one who's going to suffer and pay for, the decisions that they make, which are usually purely for themselves. I mean, there isn't a great deal of humanity flying around at these meetings, I don't think. Several times I've been in meetings, fly on the wall, and, with bankers and what have you. I was not one of the bankers, but, I was there in a security capacity. And, a favorite phrase was, there's going to be a crisis. How can we make some money out of this?
Yeah.
It's a very, very typical attitude. Well, there is going to be a crisis, not how do we mitigate that crisis or minimize it, but hey, how can we make some cash out of this one? And it's a very unfortunate attitude, because eventually it comes back to bite people. If you go back to Roman times, the mob of Rome, which was the general people, have to be respected. They have to be amused in those days with circuses, which were, where they put on stage shows of gladiators or what have you. Nowadays it's called the media. And it's the same process. It's just a sophistication of the same process. Keep them amused, Keep them in the dark and throw shit on them, and they grow just wonderfully. Mushrooms.
Yeah, the mushrooms. No, I totally agree with you on that. We are experiencing, like probably the UK and a lot of countries out there, we are being asset stripped. We have vulture funds coming in, and they're demanding the property, regardless whether you have it paid off or not, or whether you're in debt. And that's part and parcel. We had John Perkins on the show, who is an economic hitman, and he told us that this was his method of operation, was to go into a country and offer them loads of money, and then when they couldn't pay it back, asset strip the actual country. Which is what we're seeing over here in Ireland. But Peter, we have a few questions come in on the chat room, so I'm going to pass you over to Steve, and Steve's going to go through the questions with you.
Thank you. Go right ahead.
Yeah, the first thing I want to say, Peter, is thanks for educating me in relation to the Faraday cage, because I've been playing around with various different kind of homemade Faraday cages with mixed results over the past couple of months. I know Alan has been doing the same. And the one thing that was obviously missing, the missing link, was when you said it there, earthing the damn thing. Because I was just kind of constructing something on a kitchen table and putting things in, like a two-way radio inside it, and then seeing if I could open the two-way or access the two-way radio. But obviously, I'm guessing earthing is kind of an integrated part of that little that build that I should be doing. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I mean, any grid or any tin box of any size, whether it be a building or a case or whatever, where it sits enclosed, will give a lot of protection to what's inside. But if you earth it, you're then making it part of the planet. And any electromagnetic radiation hitting it and producing eddy currents will go to Earth. If you haven't done that, I'm not saying it won't give you some protection, but you're likely to get a secondary bounce, a secondary radiation inside the box, which might destroy the equipment. I keep some of my iPhones and stuff like that, when they're not in use, I keep them in tin boxes so they won't get fried.
Just again, real quickly, on the subject of earthing, do you earth yourself, Peter, or have you heard of that?
Well, they say that you should spend a certain amount of time every day just walking about in your garden on the grass in your bare feet. I'm fussy about shoes. I cannot wear shoes with totally rubberized, insulative soles. It makes my legs ache. So I think if you are completely insulated from the earth electrically, then that's not necessarily a good thing. If you go back to how you were built over the last 4.5 million years and don't get too far away from it, I don't think you'd be far wrong. The irony of it is that with all of these talk of, if this goes down or that goes down, a very primitive society will be the one that survives. A highly sophisticated society dependent on computers and iPhones and holes in the wall is the one that is in fact most vulnerable.
Exactly. I couldn't agree more. So yeah, we need to keep that in mind actually, because I think over the years, and I'm sure everyone here will agree, over the past couple of years, technology has taken over people's lives to the extent whereby when I was a kid, we played outdoors. My kids play indoors. Well, we try to kick them outdoors, but everything that they have is kind of gay. It's built around staying indoors and not really interacting with people in the biblical sense of the word, but kind of electronic interaction. And you're right. I mean, if everything went down, sure, even if we have a power cut, it's like the kids don't know what to do. It's overloaded. They just can't comprehend no electricity. But
well, we're living progressively now with the younger people in the cyber age. I mean, I regret that. It's, when I was a child, a lot of my amusements were practical and generated by myself and my friends, and they were real things. I mean, a lot of kids now, teenagers, spend a lot of time in their bedrooms, on the social networks or what have you. It's not real. Yeah. With the greatest respect, it is an artificial environment, and they are likely to be influenced by artificial and totally unrealistic and bizarre philosophies or very nasty things. I won't mention them over the airwaves, but you know where I'm going with that. But even films often have a very negative agenda, and then when kids come out and start doing terrible things off the top of their head, you think, well, where did they get that idea from? But the whole basis of everything that impinges on a person is in to some extent programming them. And if people just focused on positive programming, and it would be much more healthy. I was reading on your webpage from Barry these potential dangers to our grandchildren in the DNA. I found that very interesting. And I think that's, I always try to work 200 years ahead, literally. So, one's got to try to protect the grandchildren and their world, while at the same time trying to protect our own children and our own adults now. A lot of these things are very, very slow. They creep up on you. It's like watching glass grow or watching paint dry. If you're not aware of what's happening, you can say, oh, that'll be all right. It's like Fukushima in Japan. The Japanese are trying to ignore the radiation dangers out there. But they reckon, this is scientifically analyzed, that about 3 million people in Japan will die from radiation from those accidents. And they will do it in more in 15 years' time than now, because it takes that long for those diseases to become manifest.
We actually heard there a while ago, Peter, that anyone in Fukushima who does go with radiation sickness-like symptoms to their doctor, that by law, again, this has not been confirmed, but this is what we heard, but there's supposed to be some law, or whatever you want to call it, in Japan, that if somebody does go to the GP with those kind of sickness, the GP is not allowed diagnose it as radiation sickness. Have you heard anything about that?
Well, what you get with Asiatic, particularly Japanese, is loss of face. There was a big Japan earthquake some years ago. I was trying to help out on that, and one of the problems was the precinct wouldn't call in outside help because they didn't want to admit they couldn't cope with the situation, even though it was extraordinarily critical. And this is a big problem, is that if something goes wrong, particularly with Japanese, the first inclination is to cover it up. I mean, all governments tend to do that because it's kind of embarrassing. I think there needs to be a higher degree of transparency and honesty. And, if something is A, B, C, and D, you need to say it's A, B, C, and D and not try to cover it up.
Absolutely, I agree. Anyway, we're going to move on with the questions. I think I was getting a little sidetracked there. But the captain on People's Internet Radio says he's watched the Bases video several months ago, and on one of them you said we are running out of now, and you said it was imminent. So he's just wondering, how much now do we have left?
Well, in my opinion, and this is a bit of a second guess, 2016 is in fact 2012. Over the millennia, there's been a lot of inaccuracy crept into the calendars, and the actual popes in Rome have fiddled about with the calendar for their own political purposes at different times. and the Gregorian and Julian calendars, it doesn't all tie up. So in my opinion, read as 2012, 2016. Now, there is a curious thing, which is again not definitive, called the McKenna equation. Terence McKenna died in 2000, was working on the idea that there were schedules of time, of coincidences, not necessarily in things that related directly to each other. If you look around you now, what have you got? You've got volcanoes going off literally, at an unprecedented rate. You've got earthquakes going off. You've got interesting solar situations. You've got a sunspot on the back of the sun right now as we speak, which is one of the biggest ones in living memory, and will come round in about 7 days. Although when they float across, we get something called Earth quiet, which is quite nice because I think the sun's a bit managed, but I'll come to that later. But you've got financial crises. There's no gold at Fort Knox. I mean, some of the bars are gold-plated. The Germans wanted their gold back. They couldn't have it because there's no gold in Fort Knox. You've got oil crisis for the Saudi Arabians, so that the Saudi Arabians used to be oil rich, but somehow now they're feeling the pinch. And it's costing them 100 something, was it million or billion? I lose track of the decimal points. You get this consensus of crisis right across the board. And this is part of what is called the McKenna equation, that often dissimilar things will seem to have a relationship where you can't find the connection, but there appears to be a symmetry to it.
Yeah, it's interesting the way you do get that, where a lot of things kind of do happen. They're not connected, but eventually, kind of when you're a little bit ways down the road, you do kind of notice a connection.
Can I just add something in there? As Peter's talking about saying 2016 is 2012. Now this statement was supposedly made by the Queen last Christmas, off record, when the BBC were filming. It wasn't a live filming. And she apparently said in passing, "Enjoy your Christmas. It's going to be your last one." Now,
we heard that, yeah.
I have to tell you, I have enormous respect for HM. I've worked quite closely with the infrastructure that supports there. Thank God we've got a permanent constitutional monarch, which saves us having an electoral president. Obama, and that was a deliberate switch. Deliberate mistake. You don't want an Obama. You want a queen. You want a king. You want someone. It's just a figurehead. I mean, they don't have much power, but she does advise, and yeah, she does know a lot. I mean, she isn't allowed to say hardly anything because people reinterpret what she says. But I wouldn't be quite as draconian as that. I think it was partly a joke. She's got a wicked sense of humour. But at the same time, I would say, yeah, be ready. Let's have a few parameters. Don't live on the coast, or if you do live on the coast, make sure you're on the top of a bloody high cliff. Don't live, in a fishing village that's up an estuary on a shelving beach, because if anything comes on, it will get concentrated, it will build up, because waves have a bottom to the wave and a top to the wave, as any surfer will tell you. And as the beach shelves up towards the actual shoreline, the wave will crest and it will get concentrated. So don't live on the coast. Sell, go now.
Okay.
Don't live near any particular fault lines. We're talking internationally here mostly. Ring of Fire, California, Oregon coastlines. Don't eat anything out of the Northeast Pacific, which is basically because it glows in the dark. Don't drink Californian wine. Don't drink anything or eat anything that comes out of west of the Cascades or west of the Rockies. There are things that you should sensibly do. Use your mobile as minimally as possible. Don't carry it about with you. Don't, ladies, put your mobile in your bra. You're just cooking your breast. Literally. I mean, your microwave does this. Would you put your cat in the microwave to dry it off if it got wet? No, I don't think so. So, just use your common sense. It doesn't take too many grey cells to work these things out.
Yeah, I totally agree. Of course, it's amazing. Like you probably find there are some people who would put their cat in the microwave. That's right. You never know.
It has been known.
Yeah, unless there's a warning on the microwave saying "Do not use for drying your cat."
There should be warning on the cat.
A warning on the cat.
On the cat. Yeah.
Okay, right, we're going to continue on with the questions. Yeah, Chris had a question there a while ago, Peter, and he says, does Peter think he is that you are allowed to spill the beans? And if so, could you still unknowingly be working for the controllers? Pretty deep question.
That's a double-edged question. I, for a long time, censored other people's material. I know where the lines are drawn, right? I know how much you can say, how much you can't say. I know how the lines have drifted. I know what the intentions are. With the greatest respect, and I don't mean to demean you, you do not talk on your channel right now to a very large footprint. I don't know what it is, but it's not very large. What one would be saying on here, to you lovely people, would not be what you'd be allowed to say on the BBC or CNN. It's a different world, right?
Yeah.
Radio has always had more license than television. I'll give you an example. You often used to get a story that would come out on BBC Radio 4 at 7 o'clock in the morning over here in England. If that story was not politically correct, it would vanish. It would be gone. It would not ever be acknowledged. Someone would pick it up and say, "Oh God, and that's gone over the wall," and it would be gone. So radio is always a lot more licensed than television. Newspapers are totally controlled anyway. Propaganda. Goebbels said, did he not, that, if you tell a lie consistently enough, it will eventually become accepted as the truth. It's a question of, I know exactly what I'm doing. And I know where I'm trying to go. I'm trying to have a positive influence. I'm trying to rein back on foolishness, like, for example, working to a very, very short bottom line. Say you've got a corporation that's looking to improve their profits over the next 12 months, but in the process of doing that, they're prepared to enter into some very dangerous processes that might involve several thousand people dying of one thing or another. Well, you try to rein back on that. If there's something which is constructive, you try to promote it. But at the same time, I have to say regretfully, and this is very sad, that the corporations, which are extraordinarily short-sighted and extraordinarily irresponsible in their philosophy, are always looking for abstract profits, literally in the short term, the next year or two. They don't think about what's going to be the situation in 30 to 40 years' time. I'll give you an example. I was in the state of Washington some years ago, and the logging companies were ripping the trees off the mountains there for profit. They were cutting them down. They were not conducting a sensible replanting program. And then lo and behold, you get heavy rains, and you get hillsides sliding down. You get contamination of the rivers, kills the fish, and basically you get people killed by landslides and roads taken out. Well, that's against bad management. You see, penny wise, pound foolish. You've got to have a longer term view, and I'm always trying to say to corporations and governments, you've got to have a longer term view. You've got to be prepared to bite on the bullet and actually, take a longer term view, take a wider concept. If you, taking that sideways, if you ignore the people, if you ignore the Joe public, if you say, okay, we're going to make multi-billionaires more richer than before, so you get, mega multi-millionaires living in their compounds with their armed guards, but hang on. At one time, just remember the French Revolution. Just remember the French Revolution. Don't ignore the Joe public, because, eventually it will come around and bite you in the bum.
Yeah.
And these people need to read their history books.
Well, unfortunately, that's the problem. They don't, Peter. And the governments and the politicians don't seem to understand there's a thing called the French Revolution. And you can only push people so far before there is a rebellion. I've heard this before. I've heard billionaires actually being interviewed and talking about this and saying that they have to be aware of the man on the street because they're concerned about that.
What you have to realize is that up to a point, particularly with the middle classes, if you pardon me mentioning that word, while people can eat and sleep in some degree of security, they will not change their situation. They will stay in their comfort zone. even poor people will survive. But if you get a situation, you see in different parts of the world now, in Africa and in the Middle East, where they have absolutely nothing and nothing to lose, they will move into areas of extremism, which you don't want because you can't control that. And, you'll get a situation which is very, very difficult indeed. I'm not being protagonistic or inflammatory towards any religion, but if you've got, these people who are prepared to give up their lives for some spurious religious belief, it is actually because they've been driven to a point where they have nowhere else to go.
Yeah.
And, this is where the more civilized people of the area, I shan't name names, need to realize you cannot push people to extremes without getting the blowback of the fact that they will then say, oh, well, I've got nothing to lose. I'm going to do the most awful thing, which in fact only makes it all worse. It's totally counterproductive. It's not going anywhere. And I won't even get into the politics of who's inciting who for trying to get one particular pipeline through or not through. It's usually about big money.
Yeah.
Behind all these things, it's not really the religion. The people who get on the religious bandwagon are usually being manipulated by big money for big money reasons. It's as simple as that.
No, that's
follow the money.
That's exactly, and we've heard that before, follow the money. Peter, we have about 10 minutes left, so what we're going to do is we're going to quick fire the questions that we have over to you.
Go for it. I'll answer them quickly.
That's great.
Okay, this one came in from Agent. They came in earlier on the show when we were talking about the Earth, and just interesting to know what you would say to this sort of a thing, or this kind of a comment, Peter. Agent says, science can't even prove the so-called spin of the Earth, so how can it prove anything out there? And that was actually come in when you were talking about space and what's out there in space.
Well, I would say in general is, in life, talking to this person individually, you just have to accumulate as much real information as you can and come to a conclusion. Don't be defeatist about it. We've spent hundreds of years getting things away from pure superstition. Although people distrust science and distrust governments, with the internet now, there's millions and millions of bits of really good data. You have to go out there and dig and draw your own conclusion. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Yeah, okay, that's fair enough.
Okay, yep, fair enough. And Hammy says, does Peter know about the nukes blown up in the atmosphere in Kennedy's reign that were bluffed off as UFOs? He says these screwed up the upper atmosphere.
Well, regretfully, over the time of the invention of the nuclear bomb, the atom bomb, and the hydrogen bomb, over the world, I think there's been about 2,000 odd explosions of tests and otherwise. The atmosphere and the magnetosphere repairs itself fairly quickly, so don't be negative about that. But the use of nuclear material for both military and civilian purposes has been usually fairly irresponsible and not very well found. As Fukushima and others, like it, have demonstrated. Chernobyl, for an example. But, I mean, we'll pass on that one because it's too complex for 10 minutes, okay?
Yep, okay, that's fine. Where are we? The next one is, this is from Dave T. And Dave says, Peter, to prepare for upcoming events, is there known energy device or schematic one could build to produce electricity with COP? I'm not sure what the COP stands for.
I think you've got enough out there within the known technology. Solar panels, windmills. You have to have a windmill that you can take down, so if the wind is so high, you can actually fold it down, otherwise it'll rip the blades off it. Solar panels, generators in Faraday cages, earth pumps. There's loads and loads of technology that you can actually become self-sufficient or have backup. You don't need to go into anything too exotic. I wouldn't spend a lot of time developing something too exotic. You can go out there and get off-the-peg stuff which works.
Excellent. Is there any more questions there for Peter?
There's one here just popped up there from Chris, and Chris says, what is the agenda behind abductions, assuming they are not all disinfo?
Yeah, abductions. If you listen to Bases 48, part 1 to 4, I'll cover that. I covered that in detail. If you get the new book, when you give out my email at the end, or should I do that now? Should I do that now?
Well, we're going to do that now. What I was going to say was, before we finish up, what things we could get from you that would be positive? Give us anything that's positive that's coming up, or things, and a positive outlook on things that are happening.
Right, positive. You guys in Ireland, us guys here in the United Kingdom, live in one of the safest parts of the world, both geologically. We're on a very, very thick plate. It's 60 miles thick under your feet right now, whereas the center of the Pacific is only 19 miles thick. So geologically, you're quite safe. You get very good rainfall over there, more than us, which is a great thing. It's better to have more rain than less. Your agriculture is likely to continue, one way or another. Oil prices are coming down, which means transport is cheaper. You can create, as we just covered, a lot of self-sufficient energy solutions. You can grow your own food as best you can in tiny little spaces if need be. Bond with other people around you and stay in close touch. I personally think that the United Kingdom should leave the European Common Market because it is so utterly corrupt. I know that for a fact, and it's a complete bloody waste of money. Whether Ireland would do any better in or out, I've really no idea, but that's my own personal view. I think you just have to try to be responsible for your own time and space. And it's a wonderful life. It's very interesting. Be happy. Find the things that give you satisfaction and stay true to them, and don't chase rainbows.
Okay.
I mean, go on.
No, just go ahead. Finish it.
I was going to say, there's a lot of stuff out there which will help you, both etherically and in terms of people of goodwill and information on the web. Don't get negative about it. Man, has survived for hundreds of thousands of years under extremely difficult conditions. He will continue to survive again. I think there will be a lot of major disasters over the next 100 years which will reduce the world's population. And as your Barry guy said, that we have some subliminal niggers in the woodpile with microwaves that perhaps our genetics, future is not so wonderful. But, we will have to counter things like that. So natural medicine, things like that, all of these things, go for positive. You've got to do your own research. Don't just follow any other guru or any simple. Don't follow me. Just, do your own research, get your own stuff together, and try to think the impossible. Don't just say, oh, this has gone on for the last 300 years, it's going to be the same tomorrow. It may not be. You might find tomorrow, for example, that your ATM doesn't work. Right, you got to have that in mind. It may not work. So if you look at primitive civilization, primitive societies, you think, well, hang on, how do they survive? And then keep that as a backup because you won't go far wrong.
So you kind of agree on a positive note for people to be prepped just in case.
Just in case, because the odds are that you might need it one day within your lifetime. Yeah.
Okay, well that's good to know. I mean, we have said that before on the show. There's no harm. The saying that we always use is, it's better to have it, not need it, than need it and not have it.
Carry an umbrella and it won't rain.
Yeah, exactly. Brilliant. Okay, Peter, listen, thanks a lot for coming on to the show. Much appreciated. I think we're going to have to put a part 2 down the line somewhere. So I just do the email thing now? Yeah, I'm just going to pass you over to Steve. Steve's going to get all your details from you.
Let's do it.
Yeah, okay, Peter, it's great information, and you know when you're a hit on our show, because you get invited by the listeners on the chat room to the virtual pub crawl, and you've been cordially invited to the pub crawl. Your name is added to the list, and Chris, just before I get the email address off you, Chris did say thanks for answering the question that he had earlier on, much appreciated, and we have some of your links here already to some YouTube stuff. We have a link to the Project Camelot interview, and we have a link to the Basis project. So is there any other links that you want to throw at us there?
Well, let me just cover it. You can request by going to Peter, P-E-T-E-R, Paget, P-A-G-E-T, 2012, that's Peter Paget 2012, at yahoo.co.uk. Got all that? And if any of you guys send me a line, try to make it not spam, don't wreck my page. I don't have a web page, but I will send you for free an electronic copy of my new book for nothing. Just don't publish it in Spain, in Spanish, without telling me. And, or anywhere else in the world, India or China or whatever. But it isn't published yet, but I will give it away for free because you need to know.
Excellent. I think that's very very generous of you.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, I'm not in this for the money. Everything I do in terms of the lectures and everything else costs me money. Anybody in this line of country, you don't do it because you're going to make a profit. There are much easier ways of making a profit.
So there you go. So the book is The Secret Life of a Spook, and that's going to be interesting. So email Peter if you're interested in getting a copy of his book for free. Peter, just stay with us there. Thanks for coming on. Just stay with us there for a minute, and we're going to pop off to a musical break, and we'll be back after this.
This is Open Your Mind Radio on OYMradio.com, UnitedWeStrike.com, and PeoplesInternetRadio.com.
Okay, we're back, and there's a lot of dancing going on there in the chat room. Chris, mind that club foot. Make sure no one stands on it.
Yeah. Jam. Brings me back.
Yeah, it does, yeah.
Brings me back in time. I used to be a mod years ago.
Did you?
I had the Parker jacket and everything. Yeah.
Oh.
Those were the days.
Yeah.
Right, we have a pre-record now. We got a phone call from a chap called Jasper Hampton, who lives down in Cork, and he's doing sterling work getting time banks up and running. And so we're going to play the pre-record. And Jasper's just going to tell us all about what's going on down there, the time banks that he set up, and what the plan of attack is. Now, if you are in a county that doesn't have a time bank and you want to have a time bank, obviously the details are going to be on the pre-record where you can contact Jasper and speak to him, because, as Peter just said, apart from prepping and getting things ready, if you can have a little community group together where you have some kind of time banking barter system in place, then if anything does happen, you're ready, you're already prepped, you're all ready to go, you know who's doing what, when and where, and what skills each person has. And I urge people to do this. Even from a community-based point of view, it takes the money out of the system. And if you can give an hour of your time to do some, say, decorating, and somebody else can come and fix your car, it's all about the labour. It's not about products, swapping products. It's all about the labour. Now, obviously, how it works basically is that if somebody comes along to fix your car, you're going to have to buy the parts. It's all about the person working on the car, giving the labour. And as the we'll put the interview on. I think we've covered it. We talked about a couple of examples in the actual time banking podcast. So we'll just play the actual podcast, and then we'll see you after this. Hi Jasper, welcome to Open Your Mind Radio. You gave us a phone call the other night regarding time banking. You're located down in Cork. Can you tell us what you're working on and what's going on down there?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on the show. Okay, I've been involved with the Clonakilty favour exchange now for 2 years, and we're after giving it a reboot this year, and things have picked up pace. It's actually busier than I've seen it now for the last 2 years. And we've come across a new software platform, and we're rolling it out in Ireland. It's called Time and Talents. It's used by the Time Banking UK, and it's developed by Our World in America. There's 600 time banks on it, and it's basically the platform we've been waiting for, so we can roll it out into other towns and neighbourhoods.
Excellent. And can you tell us how many time banks are set up or in the process of being set up at the moment? Okay,
well, Clonakilty has been very established since May 2012, and it was primarily a time bank model, but they, in the way that what everyone's hour was worth the same. A lot of the core values were based on time banking core values. The only difference is they had favour fares back in the early days, where goods were being swapped. So we've got rid of all that now for the time being, and we're just basing it on the time banking model. Fairly recently now, a couple of our coordinating teams said, "Oh well, actually, we live close to another town. Maybe we should start one there." So I said, "Okay, fine." maybe we'll do one in this town down the road as well, Kinsale. And it's kind of growing from there, really.
Brilliant. And how many locations can you tell us that you have set up at the moment?
Well, it's early days, but we have 2 coordinators looking after Kinsale, 2 coordinators looking after Bantry and Ballydehob, 2 coordinators looking after Dunmanway, and there's possibilities in Macroom as well. We have people in Cork City. I can't really say too much about that at this point, apart from there's a group there that are very seriously thinking about adopting the time banking model and creating a kind of network, where we can actually spend our time credits in these different towns, and people from different towns can spend their time credits here. That's the general idea anyway, and the software's well capable to deal with that.
Okay. Well, for people who listen to OYM on a regular basis, we've talked about time banking before. We've actually interviewed one of the ladies from the timebanking.org in the UK, and we had her on the show, and we talked about time banking and the benefits of time banking. Now, for people listening to the show and who want to set up a time bank or get involved, what do they need to do, Jasper?
Okay, well, we're actually in touch with Time Banking UK, who you just mentioned. So even if I wouldn't call myself the foremost authority on time banking at the moment, we have the support from both Time Banking UK and Our World in America, who are passing the training on to us. We're working as closely as possible with both organisations. So in short, we've set up a website just recently now called timebankingireland.ie, and on that page there's a registration form there. Create your own time bank, or register your time bank. Sorry, I haven't got it in front of me, and that you can start the process there. We're very interested in linking up with other coordinators, anyone else who's interested, and pulling together and trying to create a network around Ireland. My way of thinking is if they've got 30,000 people involved in the UK time banking now, about 3,500 of them are organisations rolled out across about 300 different time banks. So if they can do it there, I see absolutely no reason why it can't be rolled out on a similar scale in Ireland.
Excellent. Well, I think it'd be great. I mean, we've talked about it time and time again on the show, and basically what time banking is just a form of bartering, but you're bartering your time. Is there anything different with your time banking compared to the other time banking that's out there, or is it still based on time? There's no goods, I believe there's no goods to be transferred. Do you want to clarify that for people, that it's not about transferring goods, but it's about time?
Yeah, and bartering, is a tricky kind of, it's a word I'd say the time banking community would avoid using, because there aren't any goods involved, absolutely none at all. And, the magic of it is one person could be a solicitor and another person could work at a shop counter, and their hours would be worth the same. Everyone is equal, so it's just time. Yeah.
Now, I think we need to clarify this again for people, because I've had these questions regarding time banking, and if you get somebody who wants to join the time bank, and they are a solicitor, and they say, well, my time's more valuable than the person down the road because I'm qualified. Well, at the end of the day, an hour is an hour. It doesn't matter whether you're a solicitor or whether you are unemployed. An hour is an hour. There's my time's more valuable than his. If you want to join the time bank, just do the work or the labour that's equivalent to the hour that you want to offer. There won't be a case that one person's a brain surgeon, the other person's unemployed, and their time is more valuable. It doesn't work like that, and it won't work if we took that stance. An hour is an hour. So what you do is decide what you're happy to barter with, whatever service you want to offer. And one of the cases we've heard about, and we've said this before on the show, And people will say, well, I don't know what to offer. I've no skills or anything else. Well, let me tell you a story I heard very quickly. We heard that there was a paraplegic who actually joined the time banking over in the UK. And you might be thinking to yourself, how the hell can a paraplegic offer labour and time, being that they are paraplegic? Well, it turns out that the paraplegic was actually fluent in French, and she gave French lessons. And the French lessons were swapped for getting a garden done and getting a garden maintained. So everybody has a skill, whether it's gardening, whether it's going shopping, whether it's even sitting down just talking to somebody, being a companion for somebody. Time banking is just so beneficial. Now, the other great thing about time banking is you're bartering. You're not exchanging money, so no money is going to exchange hands, and the government can't tax it because there's no money involved. That's the beauty of it. And with the economy the way it's going at the moment, this kind of system, this kind of facility that's set locally is going to be a godsend for a lot of people. And bearing in mind as well, a question that was said to me today, I was over in the hub today, and they said, what about these people who are takers and will just keep taking the service but not give? Well, actually, it works like this. You only get credits by the time that you give, so you can't take unless you have a credit. So basically, you have to give your time so you can buy a credit to use somebody else's time. Now, obviously, the logistics might need to have to be sorted with that. And I'm not too sure, Jasper, if you can tell me what they're doing in Clonakilty, do you have a kind of... Do you give somebody like 3 credits to start off with, and then after that they have to build on it, or what way do you do it?
Well, first of all, it's kind of hardwired into the core values that everyone is an asset. Everyone has something to give, and with that in mind, people are encouraged to come onto the system, and they're given interest-free, obviously, ability to go minus 25 hours, basically. That's the way it works. And then if they start going to the 25 hours, then one of the coordinating team members would contact them and try and encourage some trading. But I in the 2 years that I've been involved with Clonakilty, I haven't really seen anyone obviously try to take advantage of the system.
Yeah, I think you're very generous with your 25 hours. I think I'd give 5, to be honest with you. But no, that's great the way it is. Now, the other thing as well is that, and it's very important, that you're going to be putting together a constitution. So whoever joins the time bank will actually read the kind of constitution, because people being people, sometimes people have different agendas and different ideas. At least if you start off and you have a constitution and everybody agrees to it and signs it, then if there's any issues, you just refer back to the Constitution. Do you want to expand on that?
Yeah, well, we didn't know what to do, to be honest, because in many ways it's just a directory, a little bit like the Yellow Pages, but different. It's just a directory of people, so, there were a lot of people for a constitution, and there were a lot of people avidly against it, and taking it in that direction. It's the difference between, are we an organisation or are we just a bunch of friends doing each other favours? In the end, it was decided that, we would do that, at least in Clonakilty anyway. And so that got put into motion just recently.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. Just to kind of keep everything, there has to be some kind of rules and regulations, to be honest with you. And I personally do think it's a good idea. Steve, do you have any questions or anything you want to add to speak to Jasper about?
Well, I'm actually on the website here now at the moment that Jasper spoke of, timebanking.ie. And we've kind of had it before where people hear about time banking, and as you mentioned, Alan, and it's true, some people say, I don't have any skills. And there's a lot of people around like that who believe they have nothing to offer. And on the timebanking.ie, on the left-hand side, our exchange, there's a nice little graphic there, and it shows you from start to finish exactly, to me, it's actually summed it up, time banking in a nutshell. Like, you have Stanley here at the beginning, and Stanley's after getting involved, and he wants to move forward. So you can see what Stanley does, and then it moves on to Martha, and it kind of goes around in a nice circle, 360 degrees. And there's also a nice quarterly statement there as well. Now, I don't know if the statement will be mailed out or emailed, but it looks, I mean, it's there. It's in black and white. Well, it's in lovely colour, actually, where people can see exactly what it is. And just on the other website there, which is allirelandandfavourexchange.com, again, it's a lot of information there, and there's a lovely core value section, and there's an FAQ section as well. And I think it answers a lot of the questions that people may have. Like, there's questions that we probably wouldn't have thought of. I mean, we would automatically assume that people want to do something to earn credits, so then something, they can help people and people can help them. But it does say here on the website that obviously you can donate your time and you can give your credits away. And as Jasper said, all time is equal. So everybody is equal, no matter where you come from. I don't know, from the man who sweeps the street to the man who runs the country. Everyone is equal under time banking. And I think that's the beauty and the simplicity of it, is that everybody is equal. No one is above anyone else. And that you can give your credits away, I think that's fantastic, because some people may be in a position where they can offer a service and they don't really need anything back. They're comfortable enough, and even people like that, then they can donate the credits and give them away, and I think that's an absolutely fantastic thing as well. So it's not all kind of give and take. You can just give if you so wish. Obviously, people who just take all the time, that's not going to be tolerated, but it's something that we spoke about on OYM for a long, long time, and it's kind of different models have come and go. But I have to say, from what I've seen on the website, Jasper, it looks like a lot of thought has actually gone into this. And for the first time in a long time, I'd say this is probably something that's going to work. It's going to work well. And I suggest that it's probably going to be around for a long time. And as Alan alluded to as well, with the economy, the way things are today, I think now is probably the right time for this.
Yeah, well, it has been very well thought out, but not by me. There's a blueprint that's been created over the last 25 years. Originally it started off in 1972 in Japan, time banking. Yeah. It was a slightly different model to what started in the States. I think it was 1992, Dr. Edgar Khan, I think his name is, started rolling it out in America, and that's where the core values basically come from. And I forget now, was it 10 or 15 years ago it came over to the UK, and so it's got a very well established blueprint of core values and ways of doing things. It's a turnkey situation for Ireland. That's the way I see it anyway.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think what you're doing is fantastic, Jasper. Now, I know you want to get involved as a training coordinator and do the training, because at the end of the day, we are a big believer in the philosophy of, don't give a man a fish, teach him how to fish, and then he'll go off and be able to do his own thing and pass that information on. And obviously, you're going to be the training coordinator to teach people and then set them off on their way. So what do people need to do if they listen to this interview with yourself and go, I want to do that, I want to set one up in my local area? What do they need to do? Tell us what they need to do.
Well, rolling out the technology platform is very easy. That can be set up in no time at all, and it can be connected to a hub of a network that's being rolled out online in Ireland. So that's the easy part. With social media, say in Kinsale, I put a Facebook up, and I only knew a few people there, so I added 3 or 4 people. By the next day there was 60 people. A few days later, 15 people had signed up. So that's one area that it worked in quite well. Now, the next stage is you've got to have a membership coordinator or someone who's traditionally known as a broker in the time banking community. And their job now would be really touch base with all the new members. You can't just have a bunch of members and leave them to it and hope for the best. You've got to interact with them. You've got to say, what do you want? What do you need? And get a good understanding of all the members and actually encourage them to post up their offers and their requests and any announcements up on the portal. And once that's done, they'll all be there on the portal, on the website for everyone to see. And they'll also get emailed out every Friday morning in a newsletter, the requests and the offers, any announcements as well, if there's any community events going on, because it's as much about community building as anything else. And then just to keep an eye on it, really, and the broker would also, if they're keeping an eye on it, they'd see that, one member wants this and another member is offering that, and they'll see connections, and they can actually do a bit of matchmaking and get on the phone and say, hey, you're offering this, they want that, can you two trade? And I think that's the lifeblood of it, keeping everyone motivated and keeping everyone trading.
Yeah, I mean, that's the main thing, because people really need to stay on top of this and get involved and do the bits and pieces and not stick back, because otherwise it'll just fall by the wayside. I do think it's important that people need to be active. Now, obviously, we are aware that there's people out there that are givers and takers, and there's some people there. We've talked before on the show about this, about some people don't really want to use the energy and other people do. But the great thing with the time banking system is you get out of it what you put into it. And that's really what it is. And with people having no money, now, I know there's a lot of people around Ireland that have loads of time, but you don't have the money. And sometimes people feel that they're not valued. Well, time banking is fantastic because it keeps you busy. You feel valued. You get people who say, listen, thanks for doing that, much appreciated. And it could kind of make it like a full-time job in a way, and you could be getting loads of things done in your life with the other people that's in the time bank, and not one penny changes hands, because energy is a currency as well, and this is what you're going to be using. It's not about the pieces of paper issued by the central bank. So I think that's very important. Jasper, thanks for coming on the show. This is just a quick interview. We will do another one down the line, and we'll extend it a little bit more, just to find out, maybe in a couple of months' time, few months' time, what's going on. Steve's going to get all your details again so people know where to find you. Thanks again for coming on the show. Steve, over to you.
Yeah, Jasper, no, it's good information. As I've said there previously, you do have the websites there, allirelandfavourexchange.com and timebankingireland.ie. A lot of great information on both of those websites, and I can see from down the bottom of timebanking.ie or Ireland.ie, you have email, Facebook, Google+, Twitter, Pinterest, LinkedIn. So, I mean, obviously, there's no excuse for there's no excuse for people not being able to contact you. But
they're sharing buttons to share the page. They're not contact buttons. There's a contact us at the top of the page. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut across you there.
No, that's fine. Yeah. No, I'm glad you pulled me up on that. So they're sharing buttons. Okay, I didn't know that. But yeah, no, there is a contact us at the top of the screen, so people who are interested can obviously contact you there. Just in closing, do you want to maybe just kind of sum up time banking and sum up what you're doing, and maybe just give the site a little promo?
Well, yeah, I mean, one message I would like to reiterate is, it's as much about community building as it is trading. It's very much about, reintroducing the notion that if you run out of sugar, you could pop over to your neighbour and ask him for a bit of sugar. It's the same principles, really. And also, another big thing about it is it's very much designed to be confidence building for some people. There might be some people in the community that wouldn't ordinarily interact with the community, and the time banking is the sort of thing that might help these people interact with people where they wouldn't ordinarily do so. So that's just another couple of aspects of it that I'd like to get across. The only other thing that I'd say is I'd like to put out a call to action. Anyone who's been involved in any of these schemes before in the past, that have gone quiet or aren't functioning as well as they could be, feel free to get in touch, do a bit of networking with us, pull forces, and, see what we can do.
Brilliant. Jasper, again, thanks again for coming on the show. Much appreciated. And just...
This is Open Your Mind Radio on OYMradio.com, UnitedWeStrike.com and PeoplesInternetRadio.com.
Okay, and we're back. That was Jasper Hampton, and some great information there in relation to time banking. He did give out the websites there, and if anyone wants to check them out, they are up on the chat room. But I'll just read them out again. timebankingireland.ie. I did say timebanking.ie during that interview, but I meant to say timebankingireland.ie. And also allirelandfavourexchange.com. They're two fantastic websites. You can get a lot of information there. So I will pop those up on the chat room now.
Brilliant. Now, the one thing that Jasper didn't say, and it's just him being a nice guy, and he didn't want to mention it, but he has been putting a lot of his own money into this project himself. So he has obviously a moral conscience to do what he's doing and believes in what he's doing. And I totally, myself and Steve are 100% behind him, because time banking is it's going to be needed. If we do have a crisis in any way, then the benefit of time banking is going to be there. If you set one up in your local area, it's going to be a big benefit. Now, people have said to us that, oh, why do that anyway with my friends? Well, that's brilliant. Why not extend it? Why not set it up and have more people come on board and get more people with skills on board? And to be honest with you, if you're bartering, you're not using a financial system, and the government ain't getting the tax. So, you know, there was a massive bonus there. So a big thanks to Jasper again for coming on and contacting us and telling us what he's doing. Maybe down the line, again, we'll get him on for a quick pre-record interview to get an update on how things went after a few months' time and how things are going. And we'll take it from there. Now, we did get an email in from JJ. Thanks for the reminder, JJ. And JJ wanted to know about the OYM supporters group and what's happening with that. Well, myself and Steve have recorded the fluid belief system, and that is now an audio. So we just have to put the video together for that, which is going to be something that, you know, if you are going to join the supporters group, then the fluid belief system is something that you're going to have, really, in all honesty. If you get it, if you listen to it and you get it and you say, yeah, that's me, that's fine. Because if you don't have a fluid belief system and you're stuck in your belief, then you probably won't last long in the group. And I'm not being funny when I say that, because if you're stuck in a belief system, you don't have an open mind and you're not going to be learning anything. And the topics that we'll be speaking about in the supporters group will be so open-minded that, you know, you'll only end up getting into an argument or something trying to defend your belief system. So it's not worthwhile joining if you don't have an open mind, in all honesty. And that's going to be a stipulation, really, to be honest with you. So we're going to put that video together and get that up on YouTube, and then we need to... The forum is together. We need to... we are working with Chris. He's on the chat at the moment, and Chris has given us a handout regarding being a mediator for the actual forum. So,
Moderator, maybe?
A moderator, sorry, a mediator, moderator.
Although he does offer mediation services if you need it. He ain't cheap, but he's good.
I knew it was beginning with M. I was going back to Sesame Street, you know.
Thank God you didn't say monster.
No, I was going to say meditator.
There's a couple of other words you could have chose too, but we can't use them.
Yeah, it's an M word. So yes, so definitely. So it's in hand. It's just I've been very busy. Steve has been busy working. I've been busy, you know,
sunning yourself,
running around the place. Yeah, with hailstones coming down. Been over in the hub and obviously gone down to the Collection Hotel and a handful of other things that have been going on. As usual, running OYM is like a full-time job. I know we only do 2 hours on a Sunday night, but to get everything together and get everything organised and speaking to people during the week, because we do get phone calls and we get emails off people asking about certain things, asking for contact information or, you know, Pain Genie, believe it or not, some Pain Genie information as well. I had a customer up with me today. A person up with me today getting some Pain Genie treatment as well. So that's still ongoing. So, you know, we are involved in a number of things.
Can I just interject there and just say that...
I was wondering what you were doing. Is that what you call it?
I'm interjecting. Please, this is a family show. Although you do say, and this has to be said, and I have said it before, and I'm going to say it again. Although Alan always says we are busy doing this, and he uses we a lot, but because I'm kind of working full time, and Alan does a hell of a lot more than me. I have to say, credit where it's due. Alan does. It is like a full time job, and the pay is absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah.
There's no pay. There's no pay at all.
Of a crap boss.
You're your own boss.
He doesn't pay me well.
Yeah, and the abuse is terrible. But no, I mean, credit where it's due. Alan does a lot of the legwork behind OYM, and even kind of tic-tacking with the guests, and making sure everything is tickety-boo and everything is all switched on here, and answering we do get a hell of a lot of emails. There are a lot of emails because Alan does CC me on the emails, and there's a hell of a lot that does come in. And he answers them all. If I have something to add, I will, but the majority of the replies are done by Alan on a daily basis. And by his own admission, and he will say this, that he doesn't like to let an email go cold. If it comes in, he will answer it as soon as he possibly can. If it goes a couple of hours, that's not Alan. He's a very punctual guy, and it has to be said. So a lot of the legwork is a one-man job a lot of the time. I mean, realistically, I kind of show up and, I just kind of sit here and play with the toys.
Well, you are working full time, and you do have 3 kids, so it's understandable. So it works out, between us. We get the job done, and that's really what it boils down to. So but that's it, and it is full time. But it's enjoyable, and it's the moral conscience that we have. We just feel we have to get the information out there. And we do our best, and obviously, if people are interested in getting involved and having their own radio show, I know Vin over at PIR has slots available. So if you do fancy, and to be honest with you, if you feel you want to talk about something and it's strong enough, contact Vin on PIR, and if you want to have your own show and you want to have your say, I'm sure Vin will be more than happy to try and accommodate you. And I know a couple of people, we've said that before, actually have gone on to PIR and actually have set up their own show.
And it also has to be said that full training will be given if people need it, and you've done it as well. Yeah. Alan has helped several people out. He's given them the information. He's trained them on what to do, and they have actually gone on and I won't say become very successful, but they have gone on and been able to do what they need to do. Yeah.
So if you feel you have a lot to say and you want to have your own show, by all means contact Finn. I'm sure he won't mind us saying that, and he'll be able to organise you a slot, I'm sure, if you have a chat with him. Now the other thing is, what we're trying to organise is another seminar. We did a seminar last year with Richard Cumbers in Navan, Ardboyne, and that went down very well. And we're going to try and do another one, but with Richard and Clive de Carl, although Clive probably doesn't know about it yet, so don't say anything until we speak to Clive.
It's a secret.
It's a secret between me, Steve, and you lot, okay? But I have mentioned it to Richard, and I'm sure Richard would be up for that. So as soon as we know, and it'll be a free seminar, we know people don't have any money, so we're not going to charge. There'll be a donation bucket there, and if you only have €1, stick €1 in, that's it. If you don't have anything, don't worry about it. You're not obliged to actually put any money in. But we try and do free seminars because it's all about education. So that's on the cards. If we can do that, that'll be fantastic. That'll be the aim. We'll keep you posted. I'm hoping to do the support video this week if we can. We'll keep you posted on that anyway. So for the time being, for myself, Alan James, who's on with Vin, do you know?
Vin is going to be talking about, he's going to be, there's a page here open, he's going to be doing kind of a thing on The Economist and obviously the state of the country, and, I'll actually post it in the thing there, usury and all this. It's going to be fantastic.
The monetary system.
The monetary system as a whole, yeah.
We'll be switching over. I think it's Peter from the Weir Bank might be on with them. I think you mentioned that earlier today. But anyway, check it out. We have to go. For myself, Alan James, take it easy, stay safe. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Okay, and for myself, Stephen George, it's been great having you all here. So thanks to everyone on OYM chat room and also PIR chat room. We will see you again in a week's time. Take care. Bye-bye.